Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Freelancers Tea Break, the short and sweet podcast you can enjoy whilst you're making a cuppa. This week, I wanted to talk about the book. The book I have finally written. I have been writing this book. I guess it actually started probably, 15 years ago. So I've been talking about freelancing, whether it's initially just on Twitter back when it was delightful in 2009 when I first went freelance, and then I was sort of sharing around 2010, 2011 a lot of information. I started the blog, then I started this podcast, and eventually I ended up writing a book called 30 Days to Go Freelance, which then became the course 30 Days to Go Freelance, where I expanded a lot more on it. But I always wanted to write a book, but I never thought I was capable of doing it, largely because ADHD. At that time, unknown ADHD, so just me thinking I couldn't do it, I couldn't focus, I wasn't smart enough, any of those things. Having undiagnosed ADHD for so long brings such a number of delights in terms of limiting beliefs. But over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I kind of started to think, actually, I do want to write this book. And one of my clients, Gail, who runs Book Doubling, she is a book coach, but she is specifically for people with ADHD. And I think in chatting to her, I was like, okay, I can do this because I have written so much content over the years. It's just like writing that content as a book instead of blog posts, newsletters, social media posts, all these sorts of things. And I'm not saying like I sat down and just took everything I had, because I actually ended up writing it all from fresh. It made more sense to my brain. It was much too complicated to take everything from all the other places. Although I know there are people who do that and it looks like a very clever way to do it. But I just really wanted to write a book that would introduce freelancing to more people. And I wanted to write it for the people who are considering freelancing or have just started and feeling a bit lost. And they're the ones that are freelancing because they're passionate about what they do or helping people and supporting people through their services. But crucially, they're not doing it to make six figures. That's not their key goal. It might be a nice side effect. It might be one of their sub goals. But the goal often, and this is what I get reflected about from a lot of my clients and things like that, is to create a career that is more flexible and that allows people to work around responsibilities, whether it's caring for children or older family members or those with disabilities. There's so many different ways that we can be in caring roles in society, whether it's working around our own disabilities or neurodiversities, lots and lots of different reasons why. It might just be never feeling like you fitted in the corporate world. And that was something I definitely related to. Again, discovering that I had ADHD made a lot of that make more sense. But being able to work around my own energy, my own focus and what worked well and what didn't, and having a bit more control. I wanted to write something for those people. I wanted to write something for the people who they don't necessarily want to take over the world. They want to create their own lovely world, or a world that is more sustainable and allows them to earn income and potentially have a lovely life, but without feeling all of this huge pressure. So I wanted to write something very practical. I wanted to write something that took people step by step through things, that turned a lot of the scary stuff into more plain language, relatable things. So I know especially a lot of people really struggle with the financial side of things, the legal side of things, insurance, pensions, all those kind of things that can feel really intimidating and scary. So I wanted to take some of the fear out of that. And one of the best ways to take fear out of things is by sharing knowledge on it and learning. So yeah, it's for those people. And I would also say primarily UK people, just because a lot of the stuff I do talk about in the book is things like HMRC and some of our laws and things like that there was plenty in the book that will be relative to worldwide audiences, but I did want to make this one a bit more UK centric. So that is something to think about if you are thinking about getting the book. But yeah, there is loads and loads in there that is relevant for everyone around the world. It's just, I wanted to make it, this one, more UK centric. Anyway, so I don't think I've mentioned that it's called The Freelance Lifestyle. I was like, oh, should I come up with a really witty name, blah, blah, blah. But The Freelance Lifestyle was what I came up with when I very first started this journey. And I still think it applies, even though there are mixed feelings around the term freelance. I still think I'm really proud that I have a freelance lifestyle and I support other people having that and being happier and more content and more fulfilled in their jobs and all those kinds of things, and feel more confident and have rebuilt their self-esteem. So throughout it, I've talked about the basic setup, what you have to do when you're first thinking about going freelance, what to consider, a very short business plan. If you've seen any of my stuff before, you know I'm not in very detailed descriptive business plans because things change. I mean, the last few years have shown us that. So there's everything there about the planning, the getting started, and then all the processes like incoming, outgoing, finding clients, tax, national insurance, pensions. There's a whole section in there with all of the different kinds of benefits and financial support and options like that available. I've touched on things like universal credit and things like that in there. And access to work also has a section. So there's quite a bit in there because I really want it to be a useful resource that people can flick back to. Ideally, I'd love people to have the paperback version, because a sign for me of a great book is when people will read the Kindle version or an audiobook and then be like, okay, now I need the paperback so that I can make notes or I can flick through it quickly. So yeah, and then there's plenty in there, obviously, about finding clients, contracts, terms and conditions, how to deal with difficult situations. And then at the end, there's a whole section there on future-proofing and how to adapt and be agile, because that is such a big factor of freelancing. And also, I've also put in sections there about supporting your mental and physical health as a freelancer. And again, because I'm very aware of freelancing being an option for those who may have health challenges and things like that, I've tried to adapt to that as well. So there's no kind of prescriptive make sure you're out running 3 times a week or anything like that. It's all designed to be what works for you and small steps and yeah, that sort of thing. So that's a bit about what the book is. The process was so interesting because I found I really enjoyed writing. I've always loved writing. I think I've just, I think academic writing, because of my experience at university of really struggling and not being able to ask for help and not being able to understand sometimes the assignments. I think I had applied some of those thinking initially to the book, but it was such a lovely process. And next week I'm going to be talking with Gail about writing as someone with ADHD. But just to give you a brief overview, I worked with Gail every week where we would meet up, have 2 hours together where I would just sit down and write while she was there body doubling me. I'd share my screen so that I couldn't get distracted because I needed that extra accountability. But also I found blocking out that time every week meant that I wasn't thinking, oh, I need to write some more of the book. I already had planned it and scheduled it in, so I didn't need to worry about that. And I found myself continuing to write after the sessions or in the evenings because momentum is key. And this year alone, or the last year, really, really brought that home to me that once I get started, I'm fine. But sometimes it's the getting started and the scheduling things in. I think some of the things I found really difficult were editing. I find it really hard. Once I've done something, I don't want to keep going over it, which is awful, but it's not awful. It's how my brain works. I'm not a finisher. And I was fortunate that Gail was able to go through because she has editing background. So she was able to go through it all and I have some lovely author friends who gave me some notes and things like that as well. So that the structure was fine because I kind of had gone over some of the things beforehand through the course and very initially writing a vague ebook. That wasn't too bad. I think I was very nervous about things like if everything was in the right kind of order and if I'd repeated myself, because it was quite a long process. And actually, that's where a little bit of AI was useful, that I could sort of go in and say, have I mentioned this before? Or have I mentioned this sort of topic before? And I could go back and check. And that was quite a useful side of the AI thing, in just being able to double check that kind of thing. I have no idea how fiction writers do it. And I have a few friends who write fiction, and I'm totally in awe of them because I don't know how they keep track of everything. And I do, because they have amazing systems that are either like sticky notes or all sorts of things like that. Or one of my clients has an incredible Notion board where everything's connected. Mine was just a Google Doc. But it's what works for everybody else. But yeah, nonfiction almost was a little bit easier because it's kind of more process, taking things step by step. And I've got a few notes of sort of things that I'm thinking about here, because I did initially go through and have an idea of all the things that I wanted to talk about. And once I'd filled them all in, there were other things that would come up. So things like the future proofing came up a little bit later because AI came in. But there was also thinking ahead of things like, do you want to get to a point where you want to sell your business? Because that's not something we often think about as freelancers, or a lot of freelancers don't think about. So yeah, there was a lot of brain dumping in that kind of area. And I had notes in my phone all over the place if I was out, or books and messages to myself, with little ideas when I'm driving. So it kind of was trying to make sure everything was there in one place. I've got a note here saying when you write best. I love the idea of sitting on the sofa and writing at my laptop, but that is not where I write best. I write best in the office, at my desk. And it's a bit annoying, to be honest, because I like being cozy and I like the idea of cozy writing, but sitting at my desk just made me more focused. And especially as I would often then use like Flown or Gale to do some body doubling, and that added that extra accountability. And I'm very vain in that I wouldn't use Flown or chat to Gale with the laptop on my lap typing away, because it'd be a horrendous angle for the camera. So yeah, anyway, right, massive tangent there. I've got a few things here about what kind of tools and workflows I use. Some of these things I'll talk about with Gail anyway next week, but yeah, I primarily used Google Docs. I would say I kind of think if I was doing it again, I would use a different tool. Google Docs is handy because I can share it with people, but once I got to a certain stage and I ran a Grammarly check, it crashed. It kept crashing, and I had to use a different browser, which was very annoying, because then it triggers all sorts of things on my laptop. I know a lot of people use Scrivener, and yeah, I think there's a few other kind of apps you can use. Like I said, one of my clients uses Notion, and it looks incredible because she's got everything tagged and interlinking. But I still think writing in Google Docs initially was really good because I could just sit there and type, and it was relatively uncomplicated. And then so like I said, with the AI side of things, I mainly used it to see where I was like repeating things or linking things to other areas. And then sometimes if I was a bit unsure on a section, I might just say, is there anything I've missed? And if they might mention one or two things, then I can go off and research that and include that. So that's generally what I use the AI for, plus Grammarly is an AI tool. So getting started was fine. Writing the whole book was fine once I had the tools and the support of Gail. The end, I would say, is tricky because I really resist the editing. I don't think I even finished my thought process on that, but yeah, I find editing very, very difficult. And that's why it's really helpful to have other people to help me out. But yeah, I struggle to go back through things once I've done them because it frustrates my brain. So definitely worth getting help and support on that kind of thing. But it's also been very satisfying to say to my brain, actually, you can complete long things. And paired with the fact that I did my ILM7 last year, I should work out how many words I wrote, actually, because it was bonkers last year. And it's been really nice to reassure, like, my imposter syndrome that, yeah, I can write a book and I can't wait. And from a daft point of view as well, I'm kind of excited to show my family an actual book I've written. They're very proud of me in lots of ways, but I know having an actual book there to show them will be amazing. Yeah, and then the feedback I went through, they were very great about putting that in the notes. So I went through that. And some of the things that was really useful to know. So Jo, my lovely OBM secondhand woman sounds like a charity shop. She's just the person that supports my business like so much. She's incredible. She does everything behind the scenes. And her husband's an editor. So he went through and did some bits with the formatting stuff, which has been really eye-opening as well. And yeah, as I record this, I think by the time this goes out, it will all be done. But as I record this, I'm just waiting to see the next round for the book cover, which is really exciting. Oh, self-publishing versus traditional as well. I've gone down the self-publishing route. I did pitch to a few different publishers, which is really interesting. Again, this is something Gail helped me with a pitch document and everything like that. The general feedback was, I think this would work really well, self-publishing or hybrid, rather than going for published. And I get that because I think you have to have a huge audience as well to be able to get anything like this published. So yes, we're going to see. And, you never know what will happen in the future, but I feel like I've got some kind of control. And this is not designed to be a huge money spinner for me either. For me, I'm seeing it as satisfying that kind of reaching out to more people about freelancing and supporting more people, and just educating more people about freelancing. Like, I'd love to get this book into like university libraries and things like that. I didn't even know that was a thing I was thinking actually until I've literally just said that out loud. But yeah, for me, it's more the education and raising the awareness of freelancing. And I should probably talk about things like costs and things like that. So in terms of costs, there's a few different things that you wouldn't necessarily know about if you hadn't written anything like this before. So there's obvious, I guess, slightly more obvious things like the cost of a book cover, which lovely Berenice, who has actually been on the podcast a few years ago, she was on a fantastic episode where she talked about being childless not through choice. And actually that episode was really business changing for me. And one of the reasons why in this book I talk about being a carer, not just for children, but for parents and any of the children around in our lives and just any of the people in our lives, because it made me change the language I was using. Instead of thinking that talking a lot about parents and things like that, it kind of addressed all sorts of different people and maybe just a bit more kind of sensitive, I think, or I hope. But anyway, I would recommend having a look back at that episode because it's a very interesting one to talk about society and how we speak about people who are childless not through choice, and also childless through choice as well. It was fascinating. But anyway, she also has a graphic design and book design business. So when I was talking to Jo, she was the name that came up and we were like, okay, yeah, definitely. So that's one of the costs. For me personally, the cost of hiring a book coach, but I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't done that. So that was well worth it for me. You don't need to pay out for lots of costly software or anything like that. Again, I just use Google Docs. You do have to pay for ISBNs, which are like the little code that they're on the back of books. And each book would have a different code, or each publication. But if you have an ebook, if you have a book that you want to do as a paperback and an ebook and an audiobook, for example, you'd have to have an ISBN for the paperback, then the ebook version and the audiobook version. So you basically have a choice of buying one. I can't remember the prices, but you could either get one or you could get like a pack of 10, which makes sense because then if I want to do an updated version later on, I've got that flexibility. So I think that was sort of, let me pause and double check how much that was. There we go. £93 for one or 174 for 10. And then it goes up in price. So I ended up buying 10 of those, which is kind of bonkers that I'd only need probably 2 at the most. At the moment, I would love to do it as an audiobook, but we shall see. If you do it in hardback as well, that's another one you would have to do. So that was sort of another cost. Setting it up for Kindle, I don't think there is any cost on that kind of front. But there will be things like marketing. I'm hoping to do a in-person and a virtual book launch. So there'll be a sort of element of cost there. But if you wanted to do it as cheap as possible, I think if you just did it in Google Docs and then you converted it and then you upload it to Kindle, if you weren't worried about the cost, for me, investing in a cover is really worth it because I am someone who judges a book by its cover. If I go into Waterstones, I am going to go towards the ones where the cover catches my eye first. Unfortunately, that's just how my brain works. And I think it's probably how a lot of people work. So the cover was really, really important for me to invest in that. The ISBNs were, you have to buy those. But lots of the other things I don't think you would have to pay for. But for me, the book doubling was so worth it. There was no way I would have finished it without it. So we'll talk more with Gail next week about that, about some of the things that ADHDers can struggle with and how to overcome them. And yeah, I think I'm in the stage now of just doing those last few bits of uploading it, which is all a bit scary. And also the formatting is, I'm slightly worried that I'll upload it all and it won't work. But I think Joe's husband Peter's found a piece of software that can double check that for us. Oh, and you can also, I think you can pay for beta readers to check through it, but I'm just going to be offering it. I've just sent it to some author friends of mine who I know have a really good front on that, and then a few people who have no idea about freelancing so that I can get an idea how clear it is. So I kind of talked a bit about everything there, but I haven't recorded the episode with Gail yet. So if there is anything you want to know about the process or anything like that, do drop me a message and I will try and include it in the next one. And I would love any support on when I launch this, which is hopefully going to be by the end of this month. It's been such a huge project and I'm so excited about it, but also quite terrified. And I do have a little kind of internal goal of how many I'd like to sell. But if there is anyone you know who you think would benefit from it, or if you basically want, because I'm kind of pitching this as a Bible for freelancers with all the information you need. So if you think you need something that will give you a refresher or kind of just be that buddy book that you can refer to, I would love it if you could have a look at that. And hopefully by the time this comes out, there might be a link in the show notes to it or a pre-order link. So we'll see how we go with that. I might add a little bit at the end if that has happened. But otherwise, any sharing would be really welcome to it as well. So that was a bit of a brain dump and it was a bit all over the place in classic style for me. But hopefully it gives you a bit of an insight into the whole process that I went through. I really enjoyed it. I'm probably going to carry on writing more, probably Substack. I want to write a bit more on there because I loved the process, and it's probably last year was definitely one of the most, trying to think what the word is, not nurturing, but I just loved the process last year. As stressful as it was at a lot of points, I loved the process of creating something from scratch again. And I think I could go off on a tangent here about how AI sometimes is robbing us of that process and how important it is to be creative and to make things. That's definitely an episode another time. And it is something I touched on last year as well. So, right, I'm going to finish there before I start going off on any more tangents. But I hope you found that useful. But if you've got any questions, I'm obviously not an expert in this, but so I just am sharing my experience of someone that did it messily, imperfectly, but really enjoyed the process. And I hope you found that useful. Have a wonderful freelance week.